All right, welcome back to Getting Sober, again. My name is Jay, and today we're going to talk about 10 ways that childhood trauma is linked to addiction. But first, if you haven't yet, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up. And if you care about your sobriety as much as we do, then make sure that you're subscribed. Also, the source material for today's episode is in the video link description down below. All right, let's get started. First, we should probably ask, what are the definitions of childhood trauma? In the United States, more than 2/3 of children experience a traumatic event by the age of 16. Examples of childhood trauma is when a child is exposed to natural disasters, gun or other weaponized violence, physical, emotional, sexual, or other kinds of abuse, witnessing or being exposed to domestic violence, neglect, any form of assault, an accident or serious illness for the child or one of their loved ones, and lastly, the unexpected or violent loss of family and friends. So today we're going to go over 10 ways that childhood trauma is linked to addiction. The first link between childhood trauma and addiction is changes in the brain. Childhood trauma can increase the risk of developing addiction later in life by altering brain development and function by changing the structure and function of the brain. It can lead to the development of smaller or less active areas of the brain, which are involved in learning, memory, and decision-making, as well as changes in the brain's stress system that can make it more difficult to cope with stress. Trauma can also disrupt the development of healthy attachments and social connections, leading to problems with social interactions and relationships later in life. However, early intervention and support can help to mitigate some of these effects. The second link between childhood trauma and addiction is lack of coping mechanisms. Substance abuse can be used as a means of coping with trauma and stress because it can temporarily reduce the feelings of pain, stress, and difficult emotions. It can also provide a sense of escape or distraction from traumatic experiences. As we all know, substance abuse can lead to long-term negative consequences and should not be considered as an effective way to cope with trauma. We always say that people only drink for two reasons. Number one, to feel better, and number two, to escape. Anyone dealing with childhood trauma is highly susceptible to wanting to both feel better and to escape. The third link between childhood trauma and addiction is the inability to regulate emotions. Trauma can affect an individual's ability to regulate emotions and behaviors, which also leads to an increased risk of addiction. It can lead to difficulties in managing and expressing emotions, as well as problems with impulse control and behaving inappropriately in social situations. Childhood trauma can also affect an individual's relationships and the ability to trust others. Does any of that sound familiar? Comment below. The fourth link between childhood trauma and addiction is shame, guilt, and self-loathing. Childhood trauma and neglect can lead to self-medication because we don't quite know how to cope with feelings of shame and or self-loathing. Trauma can lead to negative beliefs about oneself, such as feeling unworthy or unlovable. It can also cause feelings of guilt, particularly if the trauma is caused by someone the individual trusted, or if those people were responsible for their safety. The fifth link between childhood trauma and addiction is the effect on neurotransmitters. Trauma can disrupt the production of neurotransmitters and hormones contributing to addiction. Stress caused by trauma can lead to the production of stress hormones such as cortisol, which can have negative effects on the body and the brain over time. Trauma can also disrupt the production of neurotransmitters such as serotonin, which influences learning, memory, happiness, as well as regulating body temperature, sleep, sexual behavior, and hunger. Lack of enough serotonin is thought to play a role in depression, anxiety, mania, and other mental health conditions. The sixth link between childhood trauma and addiction is the brain's reward center. Childhood trauma can cause changes in the brain's reward system, making an individual more prone to seeking out substances or behaviors that provide a sense of pleasure or relief, which is all too real for many of the members here in this community. It can also disrupt the production of neurotransmitters such as dopamine, which plays a role in the brain's reward system. These changes can lead to difficulties with impulse control and increased risk for substance abuse and other unhealthy behaviors. The seventh link between childhood trauma and addictions is compounding stress. The stress and trauma of addiction can exacerbate previous trauma, creating a vicious cycle. The negative effects of substance abuse, such as financial problems, legal issues, and social isolation, can cause additional stress and trauma. This can make it harder for individuals who have experienced childhood trauma to cope with and recover from their previous trauma, leading to a cycle of compounding trauma and addiction. The eighth link between childhood trauma and addiction is lack of social support. Childhood trauma can affect an individual's relationships and ability to trust others, leading to difficulties in building and maintaining social connections. This can lead individuals feeling isolated and lacking in support, which can increase the risk of turning to unhealthy behaviors such as substance abuse. The ninth link between childhood trauma and addiction is risky behaviors. Childhood trauma can cause an individual to engage in risky or harmful behaviors, which can increase the risk of developing an addiction. Trauma can lead to difficulties with emotional regulation, which can manifest as impulsive and/or reckless behavior. It can also affect an individual's decision-making abilities and increase the risk of engaging in high-risk behaviors. Additionally, childhood trauma can cause an individual to feel disconnected from others and a lack of sense of purpose, leading to a search of meaning or escape through harmful behaviors. And the 10th and final link between childhood trauma and addiction is self-destructive behavior. An individual who's experienced childhood trauma may be more likely to engage in self-destructive behaviors due to negative thought patterns and beliefs about themselves that can develop as a result of their trauma. These negative thoughts and beliefs can lead to low self-esteem and a lack of self-worth, which can manifest as self-destructive behaviors such as substance abuse, self-harm, and/or those risky behaviors. So, we know that childhood trauma can affect the way that the brain develops and functions, and it can lead to changes in the brain's reward systems and stress systems. Those changes can make it more difficult for us to cope with stress and increase the risk of turning to substances as a means of self-medication. Additionally, childhood trauma can also lead to other mental health problems such as depression and anxiety, which can further increase the risk of, you guessed it, addiction. A study of individuals being treated for substance use disorder and PTSD found that 77% of that sample had experienced at least one trauma as a child. Some traumas we've developed unhealthy coping mechanisms for, with layers of mental and emotional scar tissue. Just like a broken bone that heals the wrong way, some of us may be also healed in a way that's caused our minds, bodies, and our spirits to be out of balance. We can get used to self-medicating emotional pain and trauma, just like we can get used to and self-medicate for, say, a bad knee or lower back pain. We get used to the pain, and we move on in pain. But until we choose to take the next steps, which for you may be going to sobriety meetings, talking to a professional, and/or getting therapy. Therapy to unpack, unravel, and really understand how and why it is that we cope and respond to certain stresses. And unless we take these steps for genuine healing, it's likely that we're going to continue being prone to mental and emotional injury that caused us to self-medicate, self-loathe, and self-destruct. And if you're looking to take an extra step, check out the video description down below for a bunch of books on how to beat alcohol addiction and to take steps on how to improve your life. And another reminder for today's video references, check the video description down below. And we always love to hear from you, so what are your thoughts on your own experiences with childhood traumas? Comment down below. And with that, I want to wish you good luck on your self-improvement journey, and I will see you in the next video. If you want to see another one of our videos, click here.